We're analyzing a heated congressional hearing where lawmakers are debating two drastically different economic narratives. On one side, claims that the Biden administration left Americans struggling with inflation and bank failures. On the other, arguments that Trump-era policies are now delivering relief. But what do the numbers actually tell us? Let's break down the rhetoric from the reality.
Under President Biden, we saw devastation in household after household after household. He dug a big hole where the average family was losing at the end of his term over $1,000 a month in spending power. Accurate?
I would say workers suffered under policies championed by the Biden-Warren economy.
And President Trump has had to fill that hole. As a matter of fact, we've seen some of the strongest GDP growth that we've seen in decades.
We've seen strong GDP growth in spite of many, but not all, of the members on the right, or my right side of the room, voting for the longest government shutdown in history. Despite that, we have seen extremely strong economic growth.
And if you look at the success, and this doesn't get a lot of attention, but let's make sure that it gets more today. If you look at the success of the Working Families Tax Cut bill, for those folks in blue-collar America, for the folks who are working every single day, sometimes 2 jobs, trying to make sure that their ends meet, when they look at sitting down at the kitchen table, wondering if anyone is paying attention in Washington to the suffering and the challenges around the country in their household, the answer today is absolutely, positively, unequivocally yes. We know that because in the Working Families Tax Cut bill, we saw tips. If you earn tips in America, your taxes went down significantly. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans for American-made cars, and every Democrat voted against that and in favor of the largest tax hike in history.
Now, on top of that, because we understand that raising children have never been more expensive, and frankly, if you looked at the attempt of my friends on the left on child care, some of their proposals would have taken child care from average of $15,300 to $29,000 in some of the estimates given by their bill that they wanted to get passed under President Biden. We actually increased the child tax credit to $2,250, $2,200, right? $2,200. So when you compare the two economies and compare the two levels of leadership that we're seeing in great contrast, back-to-back leadership, there's no question that if you're looking for someone focusing on working-class Americans, undeniably, that would be the Trump economy and the Trump administration.
Here's where context matters. The Secretary cites specific inflation figures, CPI falling from Biden-era highs of 4.7% annualized to 2.7% currently, with recent months trending even lower to 2.1%. They're also referencing true inflation, a measure of observed price changes consumers actually experience, reportedly now below 1%. But economists debate whether presidential policies directly control inflation, or whether global factors like supply chains, energy prices, and Federal Reserve decisions play larger roles. The claim about Democrats voting for the largest tax hike in history also needs scrutiny. Voting against a tax cut isn't the same as voting for a tax increase. These are common rhetorical tactics in political hearings. So ask yourself, are we hearing economic analysis or campaign messaging? How much credit or blame should any single administration shoulder for macroeconomic trends that often take years to unfold?
Terrible. Terrible for the American economy, terrible for the American people.
Number two, when President Trump has been able to keep inflation under 3%, still heading towards our goal of 2%, much, much better for our economy. And as a result, interest rates have been able to come down consistently.
Yes, we've seen the interest rates come down this year. And the 10-year U.S. Treasury had its best year since 2020, when the bond markets and our G7 colleagues actually had rate hikes. We had rate decreases.
I only have 10 seconds. At the end of the day, home ownership and affordability is more likely now in the Trump economy than it ever would have been under the Biden economy. Ranking member?
This hearing showcases how the same economic data can tell very different stories depending on who's interpreting it. We heard concrete claims, bank failures under Biden, inflation peaking at 9% in 2021, current CPI at 2.7% and falling, interest rate improvements, and tax policy changes affecting tips, overtime, and child credits. But what wasn't discussed? The global pandemic's lingering effects, Federal Reserve independence, bipartisan infrastructure investments, and the reality that economic policies often take years to show results, making it difficult to assign credit or blame to any single administration. The real question for voters: which metrics matter most to you, and are you getting the full context to evaluate them? What's your take? Are these economic improvements the result of new policies, or were they already in motion? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more fact-based breakdowns cutting through political spin, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our analysis of the stories shaping America's future.